Welcome to NAVFAC Leadership Conversations. I'm Carol Casto, the Deputy Chief Management Officer for Strategy and Future Requirements here at NAVFAC headquarters. I'm responsible for institutionalizing Get Real, Get Better principles across the command and within the CEC community. I'm joined here today with the Executive Director of NAVFAC, Ms. Jennifer Latore. Welcome. Thank you for being here. Would you mind sharing a little bit about who you are and your role here at NAVFAC?
Yes, thank you, Carol, for sponsoring me. Very seldom do we get a chance to talk to senior leaders in this kind of a way, so I'm really excited to be able to have this conversation with you and with the rest of NAVFAC. I am the executive director. That probably doesn't mean a lot to a lot of folks, but I am here in headquarters, and I help Admiral Vanderlei with the business of running NAVFAC, financial systems, people, processes, and help to run this wonderful organization that we have in this incredible group of people.
Yeah. Well, thank you. Welcome. This episode is the first in a series showcasing NAVFAC's leadership and their reflections on NAVFAC, their leadership style, and how we apply Get Real, Get Better principles in the day-to-day. We've started this series to help close the communication gap between senior leaders and the deck plate leaders and supervisors. So as the ED, you probably have one of the most strategic views within the NAVFAC organization. From your perspective, what does success look like in this new GRGB leadership standard? And how can the supervisors and staff in this command help get us there?
That's a great question, because we keep hearing about Get Real, Get Better, and people are wrestling with what that means. And I will tell you, as much as the tools that we're using are new, the concepts are there. They've been there for years. And Get Real, Get Better is about extreme ownership, right? We hear that word, and what does that really mean? It doesn't mean you're just in charge of somewhere or you work somewhere. It means that you're accountable and responsible and have a passion to get the best out of the organization and what you deliver. Having that kind of passion, it grows the organization, it helps the Department of Defense, and it makes every leader be a better leader and every team a more productive and high-powered team. That's really the nirvana that we're really trying to achieve. And the day-to-day that really gets crazy here in the systems command that has a worldwide portfolio, it's really hard sometimes to really be able to think in those terms. But we all have to work at, how do we get better at what we do? How do we know when we're getting better? How do we adopt these new tools and learn and get the best out of our people, out of our systems command, for the most critical missions that we support?
Excellent. How has your organizational context, being in a shore command, being close to DC and the Pentagon, shaped your leadership style?
It's interesting. That's a great question. And although it would appear that I've been here a long time because I'm old, I really have not. I've been working shore installation management for 37 years, but I started on the ground. I started as a GS2, working on a base. And I've worked in nearly every facet of shore installation management and worked at installations and regions and 2 headquarters functions that operate on the shore. And at each level, I had the really great experience of being able to see what it looks like at every level. What are the constraints? What are the barriers? What's the knowledge? What do leaders look like at that level? And learn things that I would do if I ever became a leader. As a GS2, you look up and you don't think you're ever gonna grow. So you learn along the way and say, gosh, if I got in that position, what would I do? And also, what wouldn't I do, right? So you learn on both spectrums, both the good and the bad. And I've been really fortunate to have had a number of experiences, and each one of them has shaped me at different levels. And so I've learned that across the shore, it's agile. It's changing. It's never going to be the same. It's a dynamic environment. But what I do know is that we've got great people and we've got great leaders, and I've been the benefactor of many of them. And so it really shaped me before I came to this job. So I'm very grateful that I started that way and was able to learn at all levels, because I really can empathize with everybody at every level as we're trying to get the best in a really challenging place.
That's interesting, because you started as a GS2 looking only up, right, and not really looking down. And so it really speaks to how leaders help shape new leaders coming in, supervisors as well, how they may shape new leaders. And then as you start to move up, you're looking down and looking up. How do you grow your new leaders, and how do you continue to get mentored. So
Well, and it's an interesting spectrum
Yeah.
because things look different at different levels, and it's really a challenge to make sure that as a leader, especially here in DC,
Mm.
you're going to make decisions that are going to impact people all over the world, and so you always have to ask yourself, what does that look like? What can I do to be helpful to the folks on the ground and not just add another brick to an already full rucksack?
Yeah, yeah. Well, so who has been the biggest influence in your leadership style and values, and why?
Yeah, and it's another great question. I was one of 6 children. We came from a very middle class. My dad was a teacher. My mom was a nurse. I've been working since I was 13, so we came up pretty frugally. So my parents really built into us a work ethic. No matter what we were doing, to do our best and to really do anything and everything if we were going to have our name on it. As I started to come up through the ranks, as we talked about in the last question, from a GS2 on, I had the benefit of having so many great mentors, coaches, people around me that would pull me and take me aside and say, you really ought to try to do this, or maybe you should think about that. It was really helpful to me because it was really incredible feedback for me as an individual growing, and also the fact that I could learn from everybody around me. And so outside of my parents, a lot of folks shaped me as I started to come through during my career. And they were both civilian and military. I learned from everybody and anybody that was around. And in learning, I actually went to a lot of those leaders after a while and said, what could I do better? What can I change about the way that I've approached something? And they were always there to help. And so that really shaped me as a leader. When it came to DC, I had never worked with senior leaders before at this level. And one of my first bosses here was just phenomenal as a leader, as very, very humble, very supportive of people. So much so that I remember one night there was a snowstorm here in DC, and I went out to scrape my car. It was late, it was dark, and all of a sudden I heard some scraping on the other side of the car. And I look over, and there's my Tier 3 SES boss, and I'm like, oh my goodness. I said, ma'am, you shouldn't be doing this. And she said, no. She goes, we help each other. This is what we do. And it stuck with me because nothing was ever beneath her. She was always there for the people, always there to help. And so I always thought that if I ever could be a leader, I wanted to be that same way. And so I think all of us are shaped by all of our experiences and where we are. And we need to take advantage of all of that to be able to grow.
Yeah, yeah. Okay. So getting into the theme of this particular leadership conversation, how do you characterize embracing the red?
It's funny. It's a great concept because anytime you see something that's red, a stop sign or whatever, it is to stop. It is to stop and to analyze. So often I see folks that see the red, they know it's been there, they get a little complacent that it's been there a long time, but they don't do anything about it. So when we talk about extreme ownership, I shouldn't let red slip by. I should really explore the red to try to find out, why is it red? Is it within my power to change it and make it better? What would I do differently? And if I don't ask those questions, I just let the red stay. And either I sit at the light forever and never get where I'm going, or I go through the light and probably hit something. So I really look at that as being a real good indicator. And sometimes we don't look at that red in the same way that we would look at anything else. And so if you really are going to embrace this new philosophy and the tools that we have in Get Real, Get Better, you have to be able to look at that red. And the part that's hard for people is the fact that the red sometimes is a reflection of them, and they feel really personally involved. And a lot of people don't like to expose that and say, I'm red, Carol, I'm failing, right? A lot of people don't want it. They don't trust that they have leaders that are going to support that. They feel as though that they're going to be chastised in some way. And as leaders and people who own pieces of this organization, we have to change that culture. We have to be open to people who are going to come and say, I'm not able to do this. There's barriers. We need to work on it. And I need leaders that are going to take that and help with barrier removal, help with problem solving, and work with people. And so that's really the embrace the red sounds like a wonderful thing. It's hard. It takes trust. It takes confidence. It takes courage. And that's part of why we're doing this training at the levels that we're doing it. We started with the top because we recognize sometimes we don't get that level of information, and we need to embrace sometimes the fact that we do have red. And where is it? What is it? And what do we need to do as leaders to make it so that we can improve?
Yeah, and we talked about. Oh shoot! I just lost my train of thought. My apologies. We talked about the additional workload that may come along with embracing the red. Yeah, that there's always more work to do, and that hesitance to show that you are red means that there's going to be RFIs, there's going to be reports, there's going to be after actions, that kind of thing, and some people just may not think that it's worth it. But I think that real leaders would, if they're embracing that red, they'll find a way to either fix it themselves, or if they can't fix it, figure out a way to elevate that issue.
It's a great point because it requires two people. It requires someone who's going to have that leap of faith and courage to be able to say, I'm struggling, I've got a barrier, or I'm red and I don't know how to fix it. And then you need someone who's going to receive that and really help to improve. And we've got a lot of tools, we've got a lot of processes that can help us, but it requires two people to be able to make that happen, two different groups. And so we have to start training our senior leaders to be able to be receptive, and we need to be able to help our folks on the ground recognize that leaders trust them, and it's okay to say that you're failing and you need help. And that's part of, I think, the bigger dynamic in this. I mean, I think everybody sees red every day, but having the courage to be able to say something and do something about it and own it is the hard part.
And to advocate for that, to continue to elevate it, because that's going to be work to them as well. Right?
Yeah, because sometimes, you get it out of one level and it goes to the next, and then someone up there is like, ooh, I'm going to hold on to it. I'm going to hold on to it. And if you can't resolve it and you can see it, you've got to elevate it. The more you hold on to it, the more that you're just making the red redder. Yeah. And I've seen that in very senior leaders too, where they don't want to expose it, or they hold on to it thinking they're going to find something. But after a certain amount of time, you basically know whether you're able to do it or not. You have to be able to call the ball at some point.
Call the ball, yes. Where do you find balance between the high stakes of the Navy mission and your personal life?
And it's a great question. Leaders get asked that all the time because a lot of folks look and say, oh my God, they never have time to do anything, that they're married to their jobs. I will tell you, I've had a full career. I've got children. I was married. We were moving all over the world. There's just a number of things that you constantly have to balance in your life based on where you are. And so if you, for those of you who are familiar with Covey, right, he talks about that, about time management in terms of you've got 24 hours in a day. And there are certain things in that 24 hours that no matter what, as a human, you have to do. You have to sleep, you have to eat, you have to take time with your family, right? And you also have to take care of exercise and be a well human. And then the rest of the time is up to you. And what we do sometimes is we do things in that time that may not be as productive, and we make choices. And I think no matter what, across the spectrum, you've got to always be balancing those things, because you're not going to be a good leader if you're tired or you're hungry or you're not taking care of your health or your family, right? You're never going to do what you need to do for the workforce and for the command and for the organization and for the Navy if you don't think about that. So the balance is there, taking stock in that, and recognizing you're going to have to make some priorities sometimes, but having a good team of people around you that really care, that really understand is critical.
Yeah, I think actually today I was working on activity because it was easier than working on the problem that needed solving. So I can totally appreciate the time management piece is such a challenge as a leader in the organization. Can you share an experience you witnessed or were a part of where a leader didn't embrace the red, and how that affected the team or the organization?
It's funny, as I talked about before, coming up from a GS2, I saw a lot of great leaders and fantastic things that I would emulate and I would admire them. And I also saw some really tough things. Folks who really didn't listen to their people. Folks that they didn't really for some reason, it just wasn't working well. They were yellers, or they just didn't want to hear bad news, and it was really detrimental to the department because of all of the goodness that you could have gotten out of it. You just didn't get anything out of those people because the trust and the confidence in the leadership wasn't there.
Yeah, the trust.
And I would watch people say, "I can fix this, but I'm not going to go. I'm not going to go near that." And that's why we have to be really careful with leaders and really train our leaders to try to have that humility, have that space to let people fail, have them learn. That's part of how we all adapt. And then and what I've seen also is sometimes we have a lot of tools and dashboards, and we look at them, on a very regular basis, and we are blazing red, and we will have a quick conversation, and then we'll move on. Sometimes I'll actually see the dashboards, and I'll see the green, and I really am intrigued with the green because I'm thinking either we've learned something really good there, right? We should benchmark, we should look at it. Sometimes I look at the green and I say, the green I see on the chart is not the green that I see in the work environment and what's happening. And so I had an opportunity to ask someone, every month I see this as green, and I want to learn how what's happening here because I don't know that I'm seeing green. Can you help me understand what I'm missing? Because perhaps I'm just missing something really large here. And the person, and thank God, they had the trust in me to basically say, and this is where leadership really comes in. To be honest, I'm not green. But the reason why I put green is because it's easier for me to be green. When I'm red, people just beat me until I'm not red anymore. They keep asking a lot of questions. They keep giving me tools. They keep giving me more to do, but they're not helping me. And it's beyond. I can't fix this. So I color it green, and guess what? No one pays attention anymore. And so sometimes you have to kind of get beyond the data and really go talk to people. And in their environment, that walk to Gemba they talk about, and really see what's happening. And don't let the data be the only thing you do, right? Because people are not necessarily going to follow a data map. Go to the environment, find out what's going on. Good and bad, you're going to learn. And folks are really going to appreciate, they're going to open up. And then that's where the real organizational learning and trust and really working together to improve happens. And that's really the cultural change we're looking for in this Get Real, Get Better.
Yeah. Definitely. How do you balance embracing the red while still holding individuals accountable for their actions?
And that's a good question too, because a lot of people believe that, if I'm red and I can't fix it, I'm done. I've arrived, right? Actually, it's not true. And so sometimes when you take a look at the red, and this again requires a good leader and team to analyze. Why are we red? What are we going to do to try to determine what the root cause of that might be, and how are we going to test some of those changes? I can't hold folks accountable to the big red because we're still trying to understand what the problem is potentially, what the data would infer, what assumptions we might put on there. And so sometimes I can't get you to go solve world hunger right away. World hunger is red. I can't say, Carol, I'm holding you accountable to fix world hunger.
Right.
It's an impossible task that you can't possibly do. But if I asked you to do one thing towards that end that I think might help the larger and hold you accountable to that, that's where we start to grow. It's incremental change, it's testing, and then once you really get it right, then you institutionalize it and you really put it into practice. And then from that, everybody realizes, I'm going to go look for the next problem. It starts a real forward momentum of, I'm going to extreme ownership I talked about, right? I'm going to own this because it's mine and I want to make it the best it can be. And if I'm stuck on world hunger, perhaps there's a team that can help me boil the ocean a bit and get to that place that I can make this contribution, that we could start on that journey. Yeah. And so sometimes our problems are so big and unwieldy, they just become overwhelming.
We're seeing that in a lot of our initiatives. The two Get Real, Get Better initiatives that we have, the one in cost estimating for Milcon and the one for infrastructure assessments, are so large, they feel overwhelming. Can we make a small bit of progress to get that wheel turning so that can we really embrace the red in one particular area that we fully own and can fix on our own really turn that wheel to build that momentum and build a culture of continuous process improvement.
Right, because if you're going to fail every day, you're just at some point going to give up.
Yeah.
But if you can make incremental wins along the way towards a larger goal, and you can start to see it on the horizon, that's powerful, and people are going to want to do it.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the cultural change. That's what we want
Yes.
for our workforce, for our leaders, for NAVFAC and the Navy and the Marine Corps and all of our supporting commands.
So I watch a personal trainer session, and their favorite phrase is progress, not perfection.
Yes.
So if you can just make progress, the perfection will come. It will take time, but the progress, just start. Right. That's what I hear. Just start. So
exactly. I mean, that's true every January when we set our New Year's resolutions, right? We all say that I'm going to go run a marathon this year, and hey, if you can get to the stop sign or run a mile, then perhaps that's part of that longer journey that you're on. But yeah, and and leaders have to help shape that, right?
Yeah, I was going to ask, do you have any advice for leaders and supervisors who may not think they're leaders, but as a supervisor, I personally believe that you're a leader by default. Do you have advice for them, maybe in how they communicate, maybe in how they listen when problems arise, either whether they have the problem that they need to elevate or their staff are experiencing problems, and how do they absorb that problem?
And it's great because we're all under such a pressure that you're just trying to get things done. It's whack-a-mole every day, right? And so this what we're talking about actually takes some time. It takes thought time. It takes some structured time. It's Covey's quadrant 2, where you're really trying to say that which isn't urgent, but if I spent 5 minutes there, I would really make a difference. You've got to really plan for that in your day, in your time. And I would ask leaders to make that time, because if all you're ever doing is the fire of the day, you're not really going to get anywhere.
Goes back to that time management,
activity
versus outcome, right?
And then as leaders, try not to be omnipotent. Try not to be the person who knows everything. Mm-hmm. I can be the stupidest person in the room, and I love it because I can ask the questions to say, why would we do it this way? What are you thinking about? What would you do if you were in this? What ideas do you have? How do we know? Let's take a look at the data so that you're part of that team. You're the coach, right? And if you think about it like a football game, if I'm the coach, I can't get on the field and run the plays. Exactly. A lot of our leaders try to get on the field and run the plays because they were football players, right? They were out there, just like I was once. And so sometimes you've got to say, that's not my role anymore. My role is to train others to be the next leaders. And the only way they learn is the reps and the sets and the plays on the field. And giving them that space and time and coaching is what leaders are supposed to do. That's really the purpose of a leader, is to get the best out of everybody so that they are performing at their absolute peak, and then they get to be the next set of leaders.
Yeah, the joy. I've been mentored enough to know that being the coach, I should be gaining success through others, not through my own activity. Yeah. For Get Real, Get Better, the Embracing the Red, do you happen to have an example that you can share where we did embrace the red and we were successful?
Yeah, it's funny. I'm away from the NAVFAC examples. I'm working on a civilian hiring one, which is probably good for everybody.
It's
right?
a good example.
It's a good example, and so there's been red there for years.
Why don't you tell people about the initiative? Because I don't think a lot of people will know that you're even working on this. Frankly,
I think the goodness there was for the longest time we were blaming everyone else, which is classic, classic behavior. It's human resources, it's OCHR, it's any number of people. And so we really, a group of us got together across all of the systems commands, and we said, maybe we ought to just take a good hard look at this. And we did. We broke down the 10-step process. We looked at the data. We looked at where we were red, and you know what we found out? We are part of the problem. And it was really a turning point for us, because as much as you could comfortably say, hey, if HR would get their stuff together, we would all be great. It's not them. 6 of those 10 steps were commands, where it's us, and where we needed to look at processes and we needed to look at procedures. And then there was a step which was near impossible for any of those groups that wasn't getting worked on at all. And that's the group that I'm really focused on, which is drug testing and security checks and physicals. Those were the three that are outside of the command and the HR. So here we were blaming each other when the real problem was external. And we've been able to make some good headway with the teams that we have out there that we're working that. And so for, I don't know how long, we just all blamed each other. And when we really started looking at it and really collaborated and really started using the tools, we're starting to see some improvement. Again, like world hunger, it's not going to be solved tomorrow, but I feel better that we are driving towards something that's going to be really powerful, not only for NAVFAC, but for the Navy.
It's very easy to point a finger. It's much harder to ask why you think you need to point the finger. And then as you start to ask, you start to depersonalize it, and you actually find the root cause that the 5 whys actually helps you identify the root cause of the issue. And you're finding that it's partially our fault, it sounds like, the hiring command, as well as not even related to HR or the command itself. So probably things that for the longest time people didn't even have to think about because they were so busy pointing fingers at each other.
Right. And then once we found ourselves all in the red, we bound together and said, okay, we're all failing, so let's work together on the solution. And it's been really powerful. We've learned a lot from each other. We've shared best business practices. There were some folks that really had some things really well baked and others that didn't. It's been really powerful as you start to expose it. When you start really looking at the red and really sharing that experience with leaders, it really does open up a lot of opportunity that we miss every day because we're just comfortable that it's somebody else's problem.
Yeah, or we just get used to that departure from normalization of deviation.
That's right.
Yeah,
that's right.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Ms. Latore, for your time today. Thanks to everybody who took the time to listen and learn how our executive director embraces the red. Look forward to sharing more with you next time. For now, I'm signing off. Thank you.
Thank you.